Hey everyone, thank you for joining today. We're just going to give everyone a couple minutes to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started with today's webinar. But thank you so much for attending. All right, we see some more people joining up here. Again, we'll just give everyone a couple minutes to join the webinar, and then we'll go ahead and get started. But thank you everyone for joining. I see we already have some funny comments in the chat. A little bit of a Steve Jobs sweater. Understood. Understood. It is navy blue, though. I do want to point that out, Guy. Do appreciate that. All right. I may sound like a little bit of a broken record here, but for any of those who just joined, we are going to get started here in just a couple minutes. We're going to give everyone until about 2 minutes after the hour, and then we'll go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Hey, Ian. All right. We'll just give it a couple more minutes here. Until I get into my wonderful presentation and demo today. Looks like we've got a good turnout here. All right, everyone. Before we go ahead and get started, I will say that if you have any questions, we will address those at the end of the session today. So there will be a Q&A session where if you have any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And then, of course, we'll read them towards the very end. Um, Again, we'll give one more minute here so everyone can join up, and then we'll go ahead and get started. But again, if you do have questions, please leave them in the chat, and we'll get those answered. All right. So we're 3 minutes past the hour here. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started today. My name is John Kesinger, and I'm our product manager here at Wallboard. And today I'll be going into, I personally think, one of our really exciting features that came out within our recent 2.1 update, and that is AI and web scraping data sources. Now, for those who may be new to Wallboard, the term data sources may not make a lot of sense. Um, but typically a data source is used as a form of integration. So a lot of times when people have external platforms, think of something as simple as Facebook or Instagram, and they want to bring in those posts and to show them on their digital signage automatically. That's where something like a data source comes into play. However, with AI web scraping and data sources, we saw that there was a need to go beyond integrations. We found that a lot of people can take advantage of automations when it comes to their digital signage if they do have integrations. So like I said, they do have an Instagram that they keep up to date. They do have a Facebook. Maybe it even could be something such as a Google Sheet that you're keeping updated. But there's at least a source of or origin where that information comes from that we can use to update the signage. However, we found that a lot of people keep their websites up to date. I think even since the early 2000s, if I can remember that, everyone was told that they needed to have an online presence, that they needed to have a website to where everyone could go and visit them, learn more about their company and what's happening. And so what we found is that while a lot of people may have integrations or not, they did have a website that was up to date. So our goal was to see how can we get that information from people's websites on a routine basis, allow them to do that easily, and then allow them to pair that up with a template that ultimately powers their signage in an automated fashion. So there is no need to update it or do anything to the content once it's initially deployed. So first, let's talk about what is our first type of data source that we added to the system. So what is a web scraping data source? Basically what it is you, instead of, again, using an integration to connect your data to Wallboard, you simply just provide us with a URL, could be to your website, for example, and tell us what information you want to get from that web page. So a classic example is I have information on our website, right? We have a blogs page. It talks about new features that we came out with, new updates, or maybe just information that we want our clients to know about. Um, so if I wanted to scrape that information from the website, I'd simply provide the URL, and then in plain English, I'd just describe, can you please get me the title of the blog article, the description, the link to that article so I can maybe display it in a QR code, and then any other parameters such as like the image, for example, that I'd need to get as well. Now, this isn't just restricted to more, think of like antiquated websites where everything's in HTML. Many websites today use JavaScript to show a lot of this information. So if you notice that whenever you load a web page, that information is loaded dynamically, there's a good chance that that web page is using something such as JavaScript to display that. So that is not going to be a hurdle here. We have addressed that, and I'll again show you some examples where we are able to do so. And the main thing here, and like I said before, we there doesn't need to be an official integration. So really anybody can use this. You don't need to be a technical expert. You simply just need to know where is information on your website or the web page you want to get it from, and then what information do you want to pull from that web page. So let's say a lot less technical than setting up an integration. Now, the huge benefit here, I think, is that this automates forever. So essentially, once you set this up once, the idea is that you don't have to touch it again. So once you tell us the information you want from the website and provide that URL, we're not only going to gather that initially, but we'll continue to do so. So whether we grab that information every single day, every week, etc., we can schedule when that happens and, of course, adjust the frequency. The reason why we see this as a benefit, aside from the ability of it updating forever, let's say, is that there isn't you don't have to manually get the information from your web page. So sometimes what people would do is they would have a web page that had the information they needed, and so they would basically take that information, put it into a template, and then do that for every single thing they wanted to pull from the website, and they had to do that manually. So as soon as something's put on the website, they didn't would have to duplicate their efforts to then put that on their signage. That's not the case with some of these examples I'm going to show you. But the most important thing here, and it really is what allows us to automate this type of solution, is that this has to be predictable. I think if anyone's used AI, they've typically found that a lot of times the response that you get is not always consistent. And that was one of the biggest challenges that we had early on. We have a library of templates. We have data that we're now able to get automatically. So how do we pair the two together? So one of the things that we set out to do, and I think you'll even see this with AI data sources when I get into the example, but we had to be able to take the information that we get from the website and then put it in a format that the template or the content understands, so that as it updates every day, every week, or whatever time that you set, it will always be carried over in a consistent fashion. So at least for now, what you'll see in the web scraping data source is that you can choose what we call a schema, which is basically the format that the data is in. And you can put that in something as simple as what we call a feed, which is basically like an RSS feed, which is used for like traditional automations. or even a calendar feed. So maybe you're scraping calendar information or event information, or maybe the upcoming schedule for a high school's or university's baseball team, for example. So this is really, really important, especially as we are needing to consistently get this information from web pages. But what are some examples, right? I provided the example of how we could get information from our blogs page, but that could also be your news page on your website. So anything that, again, where you're displaying like articles and it will show you like, hey, these are the last 6 articles we've came out with or the last 6 posts that we've made. That's a very easy thing for us to be able to get, again, like the title, the description, maybe the link to the article, again, if we want to show that in a QR code, or even the image. I think that's one of the really interesting things about the web scraping data source is that we can also get media. So it's not just, we're getting just text, right? Because that only goes so far. We are actually able to also get information, again, such as like images, for example, if those are also present. This could also be extended. For example, maybe you have a press releases section of your website or just announcements in general. These can also be gathered. You may also even be a QSR or a restaurant, for example, and you have all of your menu items on your website, such as the item names, the prices, etc. And we can get that information from your web page and then display that on your menu boards. Another example would be for like event venues, right? Think about any amphitheater or concert venue in your local area. They have concerts that happen multiple times a week, especially on the weekends. So why don't we just scrape that information from from their web page or your web page, and show that information? So again, the event title name, what time the event starts. Maybe the event is happening on multiple days or dates. We can reflect all that information on the screen, even including the photos. So a lot of times when someone's talking about event, there will be a picture of the performer. So we can even accompany that when we're displaying this information. Also, other more common examples that typically people would get from RSS feeds, public news. So maybe there's some open source news you want to bring in. Maybe it's like world news, for example, or maybe you even just want to get sports results. Maybe there's a standings page that shows where certain teams rank, or what the result was of their last game, and you want that to be displayed in a feed. There's no additional updates required from your standpoint. Once you set it up, it'll continue to be automated. And again, with like all of these examples, there's no additional integration, RSS feed, or any really technical knowledge required in order to carry this out. All right, enough with me talking. Let's first see an example of what this looks like in practice. So this would be an example, and I'm just going to quickly pause this. This would be an example of a municipality's website. So oftentimes what we'll see with municipalities, we actually have a specific solution for this called public notice boards, which you'll see in a moment. But basically, in Texas, and I'm sure other states, there is a compliancy requirement for some of these municipalities where if they have public facing meetings, think of like a town hall meeting or a council meeting or some appeals committee. They do have public meetings and they need to be able to show that to the citizens to let them know this is when the event is. So if you want to attend it, you can attend it at this time, and this is where it's going to be located. And then there also may be an agenda that's tied to it to show when this, or I guess what will be discussed in this event. And so for these particular cities, they already had all this information available on their website, but due to some further legal requirements, they now have to put that in the public view. Historically, they used to do that by having bulletin boards where they'd simply print a copy of the agenda. They would then stick that with a thumbtack to the board. And at that point, someone could remove it. It could be covered up with something else. And then all of a sudden, the municipality or city is now out of the legal requirement, right? Because they weren't able to publish this information in the public view because the website just wasn't safe from a compliancy standpoint. They actually have to have something that's physically there. So with that being said, what we did in this case was we went to their public notice site. We saw when the meetings were occurring, where they are located, and then we saw an agenda like you just saw. And so what I'll do is we'll go into our web scraper data source, like you see here, and we'll simply prompt for what information we want to get. along with including the URL of where that information is located. So I basically said, can we extract the event name, event date, the formatted time, the location, and the PDF URL? And I basically said, I want you to get all upcoming events. And so in this case, I have it updating every day. And this is what the feed looks like over here on the right. Now, this does look technical, yes, because it's just simply showing us raw data. But where the magic happens is when this can be connected to a template in the system. Now, yes, this is a little bit more of an advanced example. So as you can see, this is actually a full-blown interactive experience. And when I click on an event, it then shows me the PDF that we also got from that web page. So don't just think dynamic content, right? Where I'm showing different slides, where we're talking about, again, world news and so forth. This can actually go a step beyond that and actually be embedded in like interactive experiences, et cetera. I think one of the powerful components about Wallboard is that nearly any part of our system can be powered or automated via data. So this is just one simple example of that. Moving on, let's just talk now about AI data sources. Now, for me, I think this one is the really exciting one, especially if you're within certain verticals. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But what I like about AI data sources is that you don't even necessarily need to provide a URL where you want to get all this information. Um, Basically, what an AI data source is instead of providing us a direct URL where we need to get the information and telling us the information that you want to get, you simply just ask for the information that you want, and then we go and scan the web looking for that info so that we can then display it in a data source and ultimately on a template that shows on your screen. Um, so this one's a little bit different. Again, we're not just looking for one location for the information. We're trying to look at as many sources as possible so that we can get as much rich information as we possibly can. A good example of that is if I wanted to, let's say we had a university and they wanted to show the results of games that recently happened. Um, yes, we could go to their website. We could find the results of their latest game, so we could saw that they either won or lost, what the score was, who they played against, what was the date of the game, and so forth. But what if we wanted to talk about player performances? That's not necessarily information that that page would have for us. So what the AI data source would do is if we needed to look up player performances or where a player did really well recently, we're basically going to do the equivalent of a Google search. We're going to search for what you told us to gather. We're going to look all over the web. We're going to find the most pertinent data source or sources to what you're interested in talking about. And then we feed that into the data source and summarize all of that information. I think that where this is really powerful is typically where you've seen these type of automations is in infotainment style content. So again, think of like world news, maybe the weather forecast, um, or really like fun facts or these type of things where yes, the information updates automatically. Yes, it's better than just having stale content. But in this case, the information is actually relevant to the customer. I'll actually show you some examples later where I can show you just how rich this information gets. Actually, we'll do a live example of it. For example, when we wanted to talk about those player performances, if we're looking at many different sources over the web, I could potentially know that if a recent athlete had a personal best, so if they're in track and field and they ran a certain time that was their personal best, or maybe even a record in the state, that is found on stat sheets that may not be found on the school's website that we're also getting from the web. So again, there's no API keys, RSS feeds, or really any technical sort of ability that you need to have to get this started. You simply just ask for what you want, and we try to supply you with that information. Think of it again like a Google search or really just a research task where we go out on the web, we find the information, and we display that automatically on the screen. Now, this isn't just we get all the information from the web and we just display it as they gave it to us. We can actually interpret this data. So, for example, let's say that you didn't, if we were showing the wins and losses, maybe you didn't want to show the losses. Maybe the school only wants to focus on the wins or where they did really well. Well, we can prompt for that. We can say, I want you to focus specifically on the wins and nothing else and just show those. We can even go a step further than that. you can actually chain data sources together. So maybe you actually have an AI data source reading another AI data source. Now, this may sound a little complicated in the beginning, but I think this is actually quite powerful. A good example is we have a data source in the system where we can get weather information. We also have AI data sources where we can get venue information. So like when are the, when are events happening at a venue or concerts happening? And we could also display the weather on that day. For example, maybe you're going to a concert at an amphitheater and you would like to know whether it's going to be raining, whether it's going to be sunshine or a good day whenever that event is happening outside. So we can basically pair those two data sources together before we ultimately send it to the screen so that we can display everything that is pertinent to that event. And again, the output for this does need to be structured. So just like with the web scraping data sources, we can basically define this into a format that will fit with templates in our system. Again, we take data, combine it with a template, and that's what gives us our automated content that we display on the screen. We always get this question, and we definitely knew that this was going to be one of the initial hurdles, especially when dealing with AI, because sometimes it can be unpredictable. But we do have out of the box, not suitable for work filters. So avoid talking about things that may involve topics that you don't obviously want to be shown in a work environment. Or, like I said, you can provide additional prompting outside of the out of box, not suitable for work filters. Such as I want to talk about positive news. I only want to talk about the wins that we had, etc. So I think that this is really important, especially when we start talking about automations and things that will ultimately show up on your screens. And what are some examples of this? You're going to notice that actually the examples are very, very similar. Um, and you'll even notice by some of these examples that some of these may be pertinent to certain verticals. When you're thinking about AI data sources, you need to think about how, if you think that this is a fit for a prospective customer, you need to be thinking about how much information is available about that organization publicly on the web. So think of clients such as schools, right? A lot of their information is public on the web. So again, the sports results, et cetera. Same with universities, probably even more so. Universities have a lot of content that's updated daily, whether it's their news, their blog, their school newspaper, or again, more athletic focused things. So the results of their games, when they had a win, the athletic performances that I talked about, et cetera. Um, of course, this could also be helpful for more corporate comms examples. So we actually have a feed for Wallboard where we say that, hey, I want you to talk about positive company news that maybe you found on the web. So what it does is it pulls in some posts from our blog, it pulls in some posts from our social media, et cetera. And that just creates one feed that shows information about Wallboard, our recent updates, or really anything that we can find on the web related to our software. Additionally, I did mention event information, venues, etc. You can say, hey, what are the upcoming events for this venue? I need to show their times, what day the event appears, who's going to be performing, and so on. For municipalities, I did show that example of where I was pulling in the agendas and when their public meetings were happening. But maybe you wanted to provide a little bit more of a general feed. So you want to talk about community updates. For example, when are local elections happening? Are there certain community events happening, fundraising drives, etc.? This may be information that you want to show in sort of a public setting or in the public view, so residents are aware of what's happening in your community. Additionally, world news, recent events, these type of things, these are all applicable to these type of use cases. And I'll actually show an example here now. So let me go ahead and preview this just like before. So like I said, company news, events, the idea is that this all updates automatically. So as you'll see, I'll add what we call an AI data source. In this case, I'll actually say it's for Marshall University. And then I want to bring up some of their past events that occurred. And then I simply just prompt for what I want to show. Notice I didn't provide a URL. I just said, can you write content posts for 3 events that occurred at Marshall University over the past week? I need the following information and have provided some images that you can use for your post. I need a title, description, the sport, and the image that we're talking about. Now, what's interesting is you may notice that I said that I provided some images. Well, many things can be a data source in Wallboard, including the images that you've uploaded into your file manager. So basically what we've done here, as you can see, we have the title, we have a description that the AI created, and then it's simply pairing that up with the photo you've already uploaded of the subject it's talking about. So you notice that there was a picture of a basketball game. We're showing an indoor crowd that is assuming it's in an arena where basketball would be held, for example. And we're doing the same thing here. And again, this can update every day, every week. So in a university where a lot of things are happening, they could have a constant stream of information that never goes stale. Here's an example as well. Maybe you don't want to bring in the images or source your own images. Maybe the school's branding is just fine. So as you can see, we have the title, description, and then the subject we're talking about. This would be more so upcoming events as opposed to past events that we were showing in the previous example. All right. So now that we have a better understanding of what AI data sources are, what web scraping data sources are, we're actually going to get into the actual live demonstration now where I'll show you how to set some of these up. So let me go ahead and go into my demo instance. Here we are. And let me just zoom in a little bit so that you can see better. So what we're going to do first is I'll actually show you an AI data source. I think this demos really well. It's also a great way in case you're creating a demo content for a customer. This is a very quick way that you can generate content, and it is relevant to your customer, especially if they're in a space like education, et cetera. So what we'll do is first what we need to do is to create our AI data source. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into settings. You're going to see data sources. And then what we'll do is we're going to click on system data sources, and then we'll click on the plus icon so we can add a new one. You'll see AI data source here. We're going to click that. And yes, I know there's a lot of options, but I'll explain them one by one. It's actually really, really easy to set up. So first, what do we want to call this? I'm going to say that this is Highland Park ISD athletic performances. So the goal is that we'll be talking about students at Highland Park ISD or athletes who performed well. Again, maybe they had a personal best, they won a relay race, or their team won, for example, and they just performed really well. So let me go ahead and grab my prompt here. I'll paste it in here. And again, I'll just read it really briefly. So it says, you are a copywriter and news reporter for Highland Park ISD High School in Highland Park, Texas. Can you write posts about athletic performances that have occurred at Highland Park ISD High School in Dallas, Texas? The idea is to recognize athletes who have had good performances within the last week. Do not recognize the entire team, but an individual who has done well recently in a game or was recently acknowledged. From there, now that we have our prompt and we simply know what we want to search for, we're going to say, how do we want to structure this data? Now, don't worry, we don't need to get super technical here. Just simply click down here, click use a data template, and then click on the data template option and select news and a content feed. Now, why is this step important? This is what gives us the consistent output so that if we have a template in our template library that pairs up with this, that it will never break. It will continuously run and work as intended. So give me 1 second here. And I'll scroll down. And you're going to see some additional options here. I'll just quickly explain these. But basically, these are additional tools that the AI data source has. So for example, let's say you gave it we're just simply searching the web with that prompt that we just gave you. It will either use Grok or Gemini to grab that information on the web. In my case, I typically like Gemini a little bit more. So I'm just going to say I don't want to get it from Grok. I only want to get it from Google. And you'll see some other options here as well, such as image analysis. So if you actually gave it images that were from the file manager, it could analyze those and try to understand the context of what it's seeing in the photo. So if you saw that example I provided earlier with Marshall University, that's exactly how that worked. You'll also see things like Twitter. So if it wants to get posts and so forth from Twitter or information from Twitter or X, it can. Google Maps. Let's say you are a hotel or in hospitality and you want to show hey, what are some good restaurants in the area? How far are they away? What are they rated on Google? And what's their address? That would all be information that it could get using the Google Maps option. It can also do image generation. So it will generate AI imagery if you'd like. Again, maybe this is just to accompany the information that you're talking about in the AI data source. That doesn't have to be of a specific person or something like that. Maybe it's of a scenery, of some scenery, a football field, or again, whatever you're specifically talking about. In this case, I am going to flip these options off just because I don't need them in this example. And we're all set. So now that we have all these options checked, we have our prompt. Now we simply just click save. I'm going to go ahead and click save, and then you're going to see that it's going to start fetching that data on the web. Now, what I could do is right now you can see that this is updating. It's in seconds, but this is a day. It's basically saying that I'm going to update every single day. However, what we could do if we really wanted to, we could come here, we could go to advanced schedule. And if I click on this pencil icon, I can actually say that maybe I want this to update every Sunday, let's say. So when we come in on Monday, we have fresh posts that everyone can see. Maybe I want it to update at 8 a.m. on that date. So I can just put that here. I could press save, and then every Sunday at 8 a.m., it's going to go ahead and grab new information. So as you can see, here's our data source. Now, I know this is intimidating. We're just showing a bunch of data, but really this is just to show you that we got the information that you asked for. Now we need to add it to a template. So in this case, I am actually just going to click back here. Or actually, let me just change this back. We can save it one more time and go back. And now I'm going to grab information for one more school that's in our area or that's in the Dallas region. So in this case, we're going to add one more. We're going to add AI data source. And in this case, we want to do the same exact thing, but we actually want to write information about Plano ISD. So again, we still want to talk about player performances, but about a different school. So how do I want to structure the data? Again, we don't have to think about it. Just choose news and content feed. And then from here, I don't want to use Grok. I just want to use Google to find all this information. And so I'll turn off the rest of these options. Again, once we set this up, we don't have to touch it again. So this is just a one-time setup. Everything looks good. Perfect. We'll now go ahead and press save. And I will say that this is Plano ISD athletic performances and press save. And so same thing, you're going to see that the data is preparing itself. Sometimes this can take a minute or two, just depends on what type of information you're trying to get. If you're trying to get really detailed information that we're going to have to view from quite a few different sources, it may take a little bit more time to get that information and then summarize it. However, if someone is very public facing and they have a lot of information out there, sometimes we can get that information just a little bit quicker. But here in just a couple seconds, or hopefully 10 or 15 seconds, we should see that information populate over here on the right-hand side. So we'll give it just a couple more seconds here. Give it a moment. And you can always come back. You don't necessarily have to sit in this interface. I could technically leave it, but I think it is nice to show how quickly we can get this information. Again, we can also set the scheduling if need be. So looks like this one's taking a little bit more time to get it. Maybe there's some more specific information that we need to gather. So we can actually leave this. It's perfectly okay. I think that's what we'll do in this case. And then by the time we come back and need to tie this data to a template, my guess is that we would have already gathered it. So let's go ahead and exit out of here. I'm going to discard my changes. We'll come back to this to see whenever it's done. And then we're going to go ahead and start adding our templates. So we have our two data sources that we've already created. Now we just need to be able to create our template. So what we'll do is we're going to go in here into our playlist that I've created. If you don't know how to create a playlist, simply just click on this plus icon, click create playlist, and then you'll create a playlist like I have here. And then we also need to add our templates. So I'm going to come here, click on the plus button, and we're going to create from template. You're going to click public, and that will show you all of our public templates that are in the Wallboard template library that we offer to all our customers. And you're going to see that, again, it offers you every single template that we have in the system. So if you quickly just want to find the feed templates or the ones that you can supply with an AI data source, just click here where it says search for tags, scroll to the bottom, select feeds, and here we are. So now that we have this information, let's find a template that looks good. Go ahead and check this one out. So when you click on it, you can preview it. You see that we have a bunch of different designs here that you can use. This is actually hooked up to the Wallboard newsfeed that I was talking about. And so we'll just choose this one and click next. Perfect. And I'm not going to create and open. I'm just going to click create because I actually don't need to touch the design at all. Then what we'll do is we're going to go into that feeds playlist. But before I do that, let's check and see how our other data source is doing. Ah, there we go. Okay, it has gathered the information. I can also preview it, and I can see that it did just find one article here. So that's perfectly fine. Next time it updates, it will grab even more. So we'll go to our content template or our content section, go into our playlist. And it's as simple as just going to slides. Now, if you did add the template into your template library, you would see it under templates. I just added it to my homepage, so that's why I see it under slides. But we'll just drag it in like so. You're going to get this option now that asks whether you want to display this as a slide or a paginated slide. If you're interested in AI data sources, you will always select paginated slide because basically what this means is we take a single template and we try to show all of the data that is within your data source. So for example, if the data source created 5 different posts about athletic performances, each time it loads this slide, I want it to load a new one. So this means that you can intermix it with other types of content in the system, images you uploaded, other templates, etc. And the idea is that each time it loads this slide, it will show something unique that it did not show last time. Of course, once it's shown all of its posts, it will then rotate back through them and continue to show it on repeat. So I'll click paginated slide, and then we'll click that we want to quick edit it. Now, as you'll see, this is our Wallboard template here, but we quickly want to customize it. So what we're going to do is we're going to select a logo. We actually want to make the Highland Park one first. So there's the logo. We want to change the color here. So admittedly, I'm not the graphic designer at the company, but we'll try to find a color that's close. Okay, that's good. And now we just simply swap out the data for the data source we created. So here it is. And there we go. So as you can see, it's talking about golf. Looks like they did well in a recent tournament. You can see it is recent. So I did tell it to pull past events. I believe I said that happened maybe within the last week or 2 weeks. So you can define how far you want it to go back and search for results. I'll click confirm, and that's it. Let's do this now for the other school. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this in. We'll choose paginated slide. We want to quick edit it. Notice how for all of this, I don't even have to go into our designer. So this could not be easier from editing and let's say connecting the data perspective. We'll choose our logo. There we go. Looks good. And now we'll simply just select a darker color here. I think that's okay. And then we'll just swap it out for the Plano data source. And there it is. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and click confirm. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to say that I want to show, I could have it show all of the slides from each feed before going on to the next one, but maybe I want it to rotate. So what I'll do is I actually am going to say that I just want it to play one slide from each. And now it will play one from Highland Park, one from Plano, one from Highland Park, Plano, etc. And I'll go ahead and save that, and we'll preview what this looks like. So as you can see, here's the golf post that we saw. Here's the first one. And what we should expect is that it's then going to rotate after 12 seconds or whatever we set in our playlist to the next one, just like so. And again, as you can see, it's recent information, but also look at this. It not only pulled in that this person did well, it also pulled in their specific time that they did their hurdles in, what the event was, etc. As you can see here, it's also even giving specific stats, and it scrolled over to the next post in the case of Highland Park. Now for Plano, when it shows it, it's going to continue to show the same post because it could only find one, which is perfectly fine. It's just that as more things are happening at the school, of course, this will continue to update with more information as it gathers it. So you're really getting a sense of how variable this is, the type of depth of the information it can get. As you can see, it even recorded the specific time the person ran this in. Um, and yeah, this will update automatically. So it's only something I have to set up once. I could check this next week and it will show new information. I don't have to touch a single thing. All right. So now that we've seen that example, I'm going to show one more example. Now, in this case, I actually want to use the web scraper data source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a web scraping data source, and then I'm going to connect it to a template just like we saw in this example. So what I'll do is we are going to go to settings. We're going to go to data sources, and this one is going to be under external data sources, not system data sources. So we'll click on the plus icon here. You'll see the web scraper icon here. And then what we'll do is I'll just grab in my well, actually, let's talk about where we're going to get this information from. So if we see here, just give me 1 second. So this is the blogs page on our website. So as you can see, it's our website. We do have this information where it shows this was our blog article. This is what it's about. This is the title. This is the description, etc. And then there's this read more icon or button, I should say, that will take you to the article. Now this is a hyperlink. So technically what I could do is I could put this post into a template and then also provide it with a QR code that points to this link so that if someone wanted to read more information about this particular article or thing that we're talking about, they can actually scan the QR code and read the full context of whatever we're talking about. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab the URL. We're going to go back to Wallboard and I'm going to paste this in here. Now it's going to ask how long do you want to take for the page to load. Now this is down to the website, so you may have to play with this a little bit the first time that you create it. You could do like 15 seconds, for example. I find that the default 5 is good in most cases, but if you are loading a heavier website, if they are using JavaScript where information populates dynamically, think of the public notice board or the city's meetings that I pulled in previously. You may want to bump up that time just a little bit so that it can load all the information before we try to extract it. So now what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and paste in my prompt. And as you can see, it says extract the following details from Wallboard's blog page. I need the title, description, image, and I need the link to the article. So then what we're going to do is we're going to click on how to structure the data. I'm going to use a data template. Again, close your eyes, don't think about it. Select news and content feed. And then that's it. You don't really have to do anything else. Now, what this does do is the web scraper actually gets images. The AI data source does not get images, but the web scraper data source does. So what I could do in this case is there's an option here that says I want to store external data locally. Basically, what this means is that if we're to grab an image from our website, we're not pointing to that website in its image link to grab it and display it in the content each time. Instead, what we want to do is we want to download that image to Wallboard so that it can be cached locally to the device so that whenever you're viewing this dynamic information in real time, it will populate instantly. You don't want there to be delay. You don't want it to take a second for the image to load in. So just check this and you're all set. Now we're going to click save and we'll say that this is Wallboard's blog. And we're going to go ahead and click save. You're going to go ahead and see that it's going to gather that information, but let's go ahead and go into our template while it's doing so. So in this case, I actually already have a template here. I created this specifically for this webinar, so you will not find this in our template library, but we will be expanding our template library more and more. However, any of those AI data source templates you'd like to use that you saw previously, you can use those already. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our feeds playlist. We're going to go ahead and go to slides, and we're going to drag our slide in. We're going to say, again, it's a paginated slide. We want to edit it in the quick editor. And the good thing is this is already in Wallboard's branding, so half the job is already done for us. In this case right now, it's actually bringing in posts from our LinkedIn, but I don't want to do that. I simply just want it to come from our blog. So now you'll see I've swapped this out. You could even scan this QR code, and yes, it is going to point to the article. So we're going to go ahead and click confirm here. And in this case, I'm going to go to settings, and just like before, I only want to play one article at a time and then move on to the next feed. So we're going to go ahead and press save and preview. And there we are. And again, scan it with your phone. It will take you to the article and you can see for yourself. So give it a couple more seconds. You'll then see it scroll over to the Highland Park ISD content like we saw before. Again, continuing to update itself. It will show the next one for the next school. And then what you'll notice is whenever we go back to the Wallboard blog, it will then be showing that that new article. So the second one that we pulled from our website, let's say. And there we go. And so again, scan the QR code and you can go to our website to read more about this. So I know these are specific examples, but I think that this is just the start of what is capable with this approach. At this point, we know that we have a powerful platform. We know that any design that we create in our system ultimately can be tied to data. So what we want to improve on is making this easier to set up these type of data sources and then connect them to a template, which means that we want to continue to improve these features. But what we also want to do is we want to expand our template library. We don't want you to have to be able or have to create things from scratch. We want to be able to show you the experience that you just saw. So grab a template, create your data source, connect it to the template, and then put it on a screen. So I hope that a lot of you got something out of this webinar today. What I will say is that if you are currently exploring these type of use cases, please reach out to us. This is something that we want to get more experience with ourselves, and we want to get it into the hands of our partners and customers. So if you think that this is something that you can take advantage of, or at least want to try out or learn more about, please reach out to us, and we'd be happy to help you set up your first AI data source feed, etc. So I just think that this is a really exciting time because this is, I do believe that this feature is unique to us. I think it's because we have such a powerful system that something like this just made sense, especially when we wanted to solve the problem of keeping content fresh, which I know a lot of people have. So it's Q&A time. I'm going to go back into the chat and see if there were any specific questions that I did not cover. All right. So let's see, just going through the chat here. First question, why are you wearing all black, John? Well, it's the season, you know. Let's see. Is the PDF displayed? So we have a question. I think this is a question about the web scraping data source, or at least the example we saw where the PDFs were being displayed. It says, is the PDF displayed on demand or is it saved to cache ahead of time? So yes, there was that toggle that you saw in the data sources where I explained that we can cache external sources, let's say. That is, you'll basically enable that property and that will allow you to download the PDF so that we can then cache it to the device, meaning we're not loading it in real time from the web. So if the device does go offline, we can go ahead and show it. It says, another question, will I need fewer AI tokens if, for example, I disable Grok in Google Maps? So that's actually a great question. So about token usage, I mean, this is a very common theme, let's say with AI. There's basically a threshold for how often you can update these data sources, or at least how many tokens you are allocated a day, and then, or sorry, an hour, and then a week. So for example, it's not that if you have those option enabled that we're going to use unnecessary tokens or usage. The AI is deciding based on your request what it needs to use if you don't check those. So in our testing, it does not just try to use some of those random services unless you have requested something that would warrant that. So it's pretty good at being able to decide that for itself. But if you want really fine-tuned output, then you can definitely go in and check some of those options off. I just typically prefer the Gemini search or the Google search. So that's what I went with in this example. But what I will point out, and I think that this is important to mention, is that if we go to data sources, in the top right-hand corner, you're going to see that it says your usage. So you can see that just hourly, you have quite a high usage. So I was testing this earlier today, getting ready for the webinar. I even did this a couple times, as you saw, and I'm not even close to hitting my hourly threshold. There's also a monthly threshold. I did say weekly. I meant to say monthly. And as you can see, that token count is significantly higher. So I would say it's very rare if you were to run into a token usage issue. But what I will say is just be careful about your refresh times. If, for example, if you're having AI generate new content every hour, maybe you could get away with every day. I don't know if someone would necessarily notice that the content is updating every hour, but maybe there's specific use cases that warrant that. So I think setting your refresh time at the right time will probably give you the most success. What I will also say is that you do have the option to provide your own API keys for both Gemini and Grok. So if that is something where you want to provide your own API keys, you can do that. I'll actually show you here. You go to preferences, and then you can see that over here on the right, I can actually provide my own API keys, and this will stop you from getting limited if, let's say, you are having a very high amount of AI usage and so forth. So you can always switch that over to your own preferred option if you find troubles with that. Okay, let me see. There's another question. Is there a click sheet somewhere? I'm sure I will need a reminder about some of the small in-between steps. So I'm not sure what you mean by the specific question, but I would say if this is something that you do want to learn more about how to connect and so forth, you can reach out to us. You'll see it says support@wallboard.info here. If you're within the Europe market, you can reach out to this address here. If you're in the US, you can reach out to support@wallboard.us, and we can help you achieve what you're trying to do. I'm just not sure exactly what you meant, but we're happy to help. We had another question. Can we set up meetings with clients to have you demonstrate this? We would love that opportunity. Yes. So if any of our partners or would like us to demo this type of solution to any of their customers, again, like I said, I think this is very powerful within education, government, and municipalities. Also helpful with, again, venues, entertainment spaces, really any place where they have a lot of public information that's updated frequently. Those would all be a good fit, I think. So we would love to get involved. Um, we have another question. What was the tag that you used for the template search? So it's feeds. If you go into our template library and you click in the search for tag option at the top, you'll see a drop down, and then at the very bottom is where you'll see feeds. If you don't see this on your Wallboard server, let us know. We are actively deploying these out. So just reach out to us after the call and or the webinar, and we'd be happy to get those loaded into your instance. But most of our customers should have access to those today. This was in our live instance.
Thanks, John. Sorry if you couldn't hear me earlier. Irony of ironies, my machine is about to explode because I'm running a huge AI job actually for John. So there we go. That's about as ironic as it gets. But I know a huge amount of work goes to preparing these webinars, and I know they've been landing extremely well. I just wanted to add that this is the penultimate one. So I think John will be glad to finish the amount of work that he's putting into, but I think we're probably going out with the the most, well, not the most interesting, but the certainly the biggest deal, which is next week's deep dive on the MCP model control protocol. I've put a link to the registration page in there. Apologies, you will have to re-register for that, but you can do it with a Google account. And please, share with any colleagues. If you've missed today's, if you've got colleagues who want to kind of watch today's thing, we'll be putting it on a YouTube channel. You should also get an email after the event with a kind of replay link as well. So yeah, I guess all that remains is to thank you all for your for great questions, and also to thank John for again for his for all his work in explaining that very clearly. So yeah, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. As Ian said, please join our webinar next week. I think this one's going to be a really exciting one. Again, it's talking about what's called MCP. All that is to say, it's so you can use platforms like Claude or ChatGPT to manage Wallboard directly. So not asking questions, not trying to become more informed on the product, actually asking it to do things, and it can perform it on your behalf. So I think that'll be a really exciting webinar, especially if you're interested in this type of stuff that we talked about today.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. And yeah, all the best. We'll hopefully see you next week. Thanks.
Thank you.